In studio, and I'm pleased to have him here, is North Dakota State President Dean Bresciani. And I wanted to have the president in today to talk about the controversy, the kerfuffle, whatever you want to call it, about some funding being frozen from the federal government in regards to a sex education study that was going to be done by a couple of NDSU professors. They got a competitive grant. They were granted $1.2 million. And those funds have been frozen for that study. What's going on here with this grant funding being frozen? It's complicated. I thought Ryan Johnson in the forum did a nice job of explaining all the nuances and the complications. But the crux of the issue is?
Well, it basically boils down to that after the fact, which is the unfortunate aspect that has made this complicated, we discovered that there was the potential that execution of the grant would be in violation of North Dakota law. We go through a vetting process with all grants, and we literally process thousands of grants every year. Normally, if there was any potential along these lines, it would have been caught before we actually announced the award and provided it to the faculty members. So this would have been a non-existent problem. In this situation, the potential conflict is so obscure that I can't fault anybody for not finding it. It's in a section of North Dakota law that's titled something completely different than the topic, so you wouldn't have even known to look for it in that area. But nonetheless, once we found out that there was the potential of violating North Dakota law, as we would with any grant, regardless of what it was about, we put the grant on hold while we examine that question of law.
The crux of the issue, I think, for many is that there's a tie-in with Planned Parenthood, which is a controversial organization in some circles. And people, I think, are looking at it saying, well, it's Planned Parenthood, so they've canceled the funding. When the first round of questions were okayed, how did it get to the second round of questions that ended up with it being?
Good question, Mike. And as you point out, we went to the Lawyers for Legislative Counsel, which would be the lawyers for our lawmakers, on one legal question. They said there was not a violation of North Dakota law. In the process, an attorney in the office of the North Dakota University system, in doing her due diligence, I think came across this other obscure law. She's new to her position, so she was looking very broadly, which hadn't taken place up to that point, and found this potential issue, and wisely and appropriately brought it to our attention. Was
there political pressure brought on you, the university, or anybody connected to this to freeze the grant money on this? Because that's the story out there, is that there's political pressure. In the letter from the Senate faculty, they said they named a couple of legislators, Jim Casper and Betty Grandy, saying that they've been putting pressure on to have this funding pulled. Is that accurate?
Yeah. I think it would frame it as a number of legislators brought a legal concern to our attention, and actually it was that first legal concern which we cleared. But again, in the process, that triggered further review and identifying the second. Some people might call that pressure. I would call that legislators doing their due diligence. If you think someone's going to violate state law, making them aware of it.
Did they bring up the pressure though because of their political beliefs? I think that's what has people worked up, is that they're very conservative legislators who are opposed to abortion, who look at Planned Parenthood as an evil organization, so therefore they put the pressure on you or the university system to pull the funding.
Yeah, personally, I wouldn't want to presume what their beliefs are or their motivations. I can see people connecting the dots in the way you are, and they might agree or disagree with that. I just
one of the things that's been brought up is that there's a danger to academic freedom, and that professors and researchers at North Dakota State now are going to feel like they can't move forward with certain things, or professors might not come here, researchers might not come here because there's under academic duress coming from the legislature. Is that a legitimate concern?
I can understand the concern, frankly, from the perspective of our faculty members. I'm very sympathetic to them initially interpreting this as an issue of academic freedom, and I'm proud of the passion they brought to that conversation. The reason that research and research universities are so successful in this country is the strongly held principle of academic freedom, and that is central to what we do. When we start limiting academic and scholarly exploration of topics, we start narrowing our education, we start narrowing our knowledge of topics, we start narrowing our success ultimately as a society and a country. That said, with the further explanation, I think most people that have stepped back and looked at this understand that it is not an issue of academic freedom. It's an issue of North Dakota law. It's really a simple situation.
With this sex education studies that it's frozen for now, does that mean that it's frozen for always, President?
No, absolutely not. Again, this is simply a legal question we need to explore, and depending on the answer to that, either we're compliant with North Dakota law or we're not compliant with North Dakota law if we execute the grant, and that'll be the deciding
factor. Can I ask you about how you decided to make this public and whether that's the way that you wanted to choose to make it public or whether you had other plans? It was on a conservative talk show that emanated from Bismarck. You made the announcement, if you will, on that program. I did not hear the program that day, I'll be honest with you. Was that your plan to go on that radio show and do it? Were you asked about it? Can you lay out how that happened?
Certainly there was no plan. It was incidentally running into the show's host who asked me to sit in. Frankly, I didn't know what topics he was going to even ask questions about. And it was a long interview ranging over quite a few different topics. That just happened to be one of them.
How's your football team doing?
We've got a national championship, I think, the last time I checked.
I understand that. I do understand.